Nintendo has always been known as a company that keeps its intellectual properties close to its chest, notoriously never allowing characters on other companies' platforms. Former Nintendo president Satoru Iwata has even specifically said in the past that having a hardware development team in-house is a major strength, in regards to developing games for other platforms. Other famous quotes in regards to why Nintendo is so adamant about holding on to their properties include, "Nintendo systems come to life the best when the hardware and software work in perfect harmony. That's why we're still in the hardware business, because we think our hardware is the best way to bring our software to life." They've certainly changed their philosophy recently by developing games for mobile, and I don't think they were ever quite as closed off as Sony is these days, but there was a time when they made a series of bad decisions in the 90s, such as a failed attempt at a live-action Mario Bros. Movie.
They're brothers. They're plumbers. Mario! Luigi! They're on the trail of a kidnapped princess.
And a trilogy of terrible Zelda games developed for the Philips CDI. And that led them to close off any attempts to grow their brand outside of their own ecosystem for a while. It probably didn't help that their partnership with Philips over Sony went oh so wrong, and led to a competition that continues to this day. Like I said though, lately Nintendo has been shockingly more willing to play ball with other companies, and even releases first-party games on other devices, albeit currently just on mobile. And that is why we're here today, to discuss why Nintendo's newfound openness is a good thing, and specifically, why the newly announced Cadence of Hyrule game is so important to the shifting landscape of the modern video game market. As I mentioned before, a series of bad business decisions left Nintendo a little jaded with the outside world, I think, so it's been extremely surprising to see them open up more in recent years. There's been at least half a dozen surprise announcements in the past decade that show a shift in Nintendo's business model, from the deal with Universal to open a Mario-themed amusement park and make a new animated movie under their Illumination studio, the people that brought you Minions, unfortunately, to the first-party spin-off titles from Koei Tecmo, like Hyrule Warriors and Fire Emblem Warriors, to major crossover titles from Ubisoft like Mario & Rabbids, and the new Starlink game that's basically become a fully fledged Star Fox game at this point, to even 3 mainline Zelda games made by Capcom in the early 2000s in the form of the Oracle games and Minish Cap. Nintendo has proven that they're no longer afraid to license their characters out to reputable partners. They even passed off the reins of the first new Metroid game in years to third-party studio Mercury Steam, and they crushed it. Not to mention the fact that Retro Studios was making 3D Metroid games since the GameCube days, though they're technically a second-party studio now, so that's not the best example. The point is, Nintendo went from all but shutting themselves off to third-party developers to opening their doors to everyone, Willy Wonka style, in just a matter of years. They even changed their mind on developing for mobile, being adamantly against the entire market in 2011, to releasing their first collaborative titles in 2016 with Miitomo and Super Mario Run. That's a major shift in only 5 years. I, for one, can't wait to see where the next 5 years lead them as they fully embrace the future of gaming and let a new generation of gamers lead their efforts in game development. But we'll get to the future. First, let's dwell on the present. Cadence of Hyrule was just announced, and while all the other third-party examples I gave were big names in the industry, this game comes from the studio Brace Yourself Games, which has really only made Crypt of the Necrodancer, though they do have a few others on the way. I'm not trying to downplay the studio. Crypt of the Necrodancer is massively successful. They're just not a huge name in game development, and they were offered a new Zelda game. That's crazy. Even crazier is that this game was originally just them reaching out to Nintendo about some possible DLC, and Nintendo basically said, no, make us a new Zelda game and that gameplay style instead. That is huge because it shows that they see the potential for their properties to exist in less traditional ways, and also that they're willing to let studios take some liberties with their universes. For years, Shigeru Miyamoto held Mario close to his chest and said no to anything that didn't fit the Mario mold. Compare older games like Super Mario RPG and Paper Mario, with their ample new characters and cleverly designed party members, to newer games like Paper Mario Color Splash and the new Super Mario Bros. Games, and you can see a clear difference in how much creative licensing Nintendo would give the developers with the character designs. Gone are the days of living clouds, possessed toys, and evil swords. Now, we just get a bunch of different colored toads that sometimes have mustaches. Miyamoto even said in an interview for Paper Mario Sticker Star, as much as possible, complete it with only characters from the Super Mario world. But despite that, years later, Mario Odyssey finally seemed like a return to form for the weird and unusual, with all kinds of new enemy types, quirky new NPCs, and world designs like we'd never seen before. That's a pretty good sign of change for the Mario series at least, but that's still an in-house, first-party title, unlike the days of Mario RPG made by Square with fairly open creative freedom. That's what makes Cadence of Hyrule so unprecedented and refreshingly surprising. I can't think of a single other example of a major Nintendo property showing up like this with a new game during a Nindies presentation. And the game makes so much sense. I totally get why Nintendo wanted it. For those that don't know, Crypt of the Necrodancer is a beautiful mix of rhythmic musical gameplay with weapon combat and collectible upgrades. Aside from the fact that it's a roguelike with randomly generated environments, that description already shows how instrumental Zelda elements are to its design. And yes, that was a very intentional pun. But let's dream a little, shall we? Dream with me, viewers, with how perfect of a fit this crossover is, and how much more open Nintendo has been with their licenses. Imagine how this same mindset could be applied to other properties. What about letting Shinin Multimedia, the developers of Fast RMX on Switch, make an actual new F-Zero game finally? That's another example of something clearly wearing its inspirations on its sleeve, and an original IP that didn't sell as well as something more recognizable would. Similarly, why not let Next Level Games revive their original concept for a new Metroid game? The concept art looked amazing, and interest is renewed after Samus Returns and with Metroid Prime 4 on the way. Plus, they deserve a do-over after how abysmal Federation Force was. But if you don't trust them, give it to Team Cherry of Hollow Knight fame, or take advantage of their newfound relationship with Microsoft and borrow the Ori and the Blind Forest developers Moon Studios. Or, moving away from Metroid, how about utilizing Nintendo's revived partnership with Square? After the amazingly surprising ports of all the Final Fantasy games Nintendo missed out on, except Final Fantasy VIII, someday, my friend, as well as the successful exclusive titles they've gotten like Bravely Default and Octopath Traveler, now would be the perfect time to put out a true sequel to Mario RPG. The Mario and Luigi games have gotten fairly stale and lost a lot of the charm they had as they've been ported to 3DS, and the Paper Mario series has specifically shifted away from the traditional RPG mechanics due to Miyamoto's attempts to make the series different from Mario and Luigi. So, why not start over on the new system and let a classic studio known for RPGs try their hand with the Mario property again? And while we're making wild pitches, why not take more advantage of their increased partnership with third-party indie studios? Let Drinkbox Studios, the folks that made Guacamelee, try their hand at a new Wario game. There's already a lot of similarities there between Juan's combat style and the old Wario Land games. Plus, Waluigi could finally be playable in a game if they wanted to include Guacamelee's co-op mechanics. Or let Chucklefish, the Wargroove developers, try their hands at a new Advance Wars title for real, instead of just a spiritual successor. And if they're trying again to branch out to movies, for the love of all things good in this world, let Brie Larson play Samus in a Metroid movie. Directed by Duncan Jones, maybe. He proved with Moon that an isolated movie with very few actors can still be super compelling. And Warcraft was a visual spectacle, even if the movie itself wasn't that great. The point is, the options really are endless if you stop to think about it, as Nintendo has easily the most iconic catalog of properties for any game company, and Mario is one of the most recognizable characters in all of media, right behind Mickey Mouse, so the fact that Nintendo is finally realizing that and taking advantage of it is nothing but good news for fanboys like me around the world. But that's enough for me on this little thought experiment. My question for you all this time is, what third-party collaboration would you like to see? Do any of my pitches get you hyped for a future where Nintendo is more open to suggestions? Let's continue the conversation in the comments. I'll be waiting. At least until Cadence of Hyrule comes out. I might be busy then.